Hannah Kim was trying very hard not to fall asleep. The conference room on Terminus Point Station was too warm, and the Valorian ambassador had been talking for nearly 2 hours. She had heard it all before. Trade disputes, border violations, cultural misunderstandings. The same complaints, just with different alien species making them. Her assistant, Quan Park, sat beside her taking notes. He always took notes, even when nothing important was being said. Hannah respected that about him. Someone had to pretend this mattered. The Valorian ambassador was tall, even for his species. His skin had a purple tint that shifted to blue when he got angry. Right now, he was very angry. His voice boomed across the chamber as he listed humanity's crimes against the Galactic Order. Unauthorized expansion into the Outer Rim sectors, he declared. Violation of the Treaty of Andros. Failure to pay proper tribute to the regional authorities. And most seriously, complete disregard for the proper protocols of civilization. Hannah checked her messages. Her sister had sent her a video of her new puppy. It was very cute. She sent back a heart emoji. The Valorian Empire has been patient, the ambassador continued. We have sent formal complaints. We have requested meetings. We have tried to communicate through proper channels, but humanity has ignored us at every turn. This was true, Hannah thought, but only because the complaints were boring. Who had time to read all that paperwork? The ambassador's skin turned almost completely blue now. Therefore, by the authority granted to me by Supreme Commander Vex and the Valorian High Council, I hereby declare a formal state of war between the Valorian Empire and the human territories. The room went silent. Hannah looked up from her phone. I'm sorry, what? War, the ambassador repeated. We are declaring war on humanity. Hannah blinked. Quan stopped writing and stared at her. Around them, the other alien ambassadors leaned forward in their seats. Some looked excited. Some looked worried. The Krillian ambassador had all 4 of his eyes wide open, which meant he was very interested. Did you file the proper forms? Hannah asked. The Valorian ambassador's skin flickered between blue and purple. Forms. Yes, for a formal declaration, there's a process. You need to submit a Form 847W to the Bureau of External Relations. Then they forward it to the Department of Defense, who reviews it and sends it to the appropriate committees. It usually takes about 6 weeks. The ambassador stared at her. We are declaring war. There are no forms for war. There definitely are, Hannah said. She pulled up her tablet and scrolled through the database. Here it is. Form 847W, Declaration of Hostile Intent. You need to fill out sections A through M, get approval from your legal department, and submit it in triplicate. This is absurd, the ambassador said. I agree, Hannah said. But those are the rules. If you want to declare war properly, you need the paperwork. Quan was typing frantically on his tablet now. Ambassador Kim, I'm sending this to Earth now. Should I mark it as urgent? Hannah thought about it. No, just regular priority. Send it to the Bureaucratic Affairs Office. They handle all the declarations and announcements. Not the military? Quan asked. Why would the military need to know? Hannah said. This is an administrative matter. The Valorian ambassador looked like he might explode. We have 10,000 warships mobilizing as we speak. We will crush your pathetic colonies. We will burn your worlds. We will teach humanity the price of disrespect. That's nice, Hannah said. But you still need to fill out the forms. She stood up and gathered her things. If you'll excuse me, I have a dinner reservation in 30 minutes. Quan, make sure they get the proper forms. The ones with the updated treaty language, not the old versions. Yes, Ambassador, Quan said. Hannah walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she could hear the Valorian ambassador shouting something about human arrogance. The other ambassadors were talking among themselves. This would be the gossip of the station for weeks. On Earth, 3 days later, Daesung sat in his small office at the Defense Ministry. He was a military liaison, which meant he dealt with all the boring paperwork that the actual soldiers didn't want to handle. His job was to read reports, file them properly, make sure everything was documented. The message from Terminus Point came through on a Tuesday afternoon. It was tagged as administrative notice and had been routed through 4 different departments before reaching his desk. Day opened it while eating his sandwich. Declaration of war from Valorian Empire, he read aloud. Estimated response time, 6 to 8 weeks. He chewed his sandwich thoughtfully. The Valorian Empire. He had heard of them. Big empire, lots of ships, very traditional. They got upset about protocol violations. Day checked the priority level. Low priority. That meant it could wait. He had more important things to handle first. There was a supply request from the Mars base that needed approval, and someone had filed a complaint about the food in the cafeteria on Luna Station. He put the war declaration in his queue. Item number 47. He would get to it eventually. Meanwhile, the Valorian fleet was gathering at the edge of human space. 10,000 warships, the largest military force the Empire had assembled in 300 years. Supreme Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the ships move into formation. Send the message to all vessels, he commanded. We strike in 1 week. We will show these humans what happens when they ignore the Valorian Empire. His communications officer nodded and sent the order. Across the fleet, captains prepared their crews. Weapons were charged. Shields were tested. Soldiers trained for the coming battle on Earth. An automated system received the Valorian fleet movements and logged them in the database. The system sent a response back, as it was programmed to do. Your complaint has been received and logged. Reference number VE2847001. Estimated response time 6 to 8 weeks. Thank you for your patience. Vex read the message 3 times. Then he threw his data pad across the bridge. They mock us, he said. His second officer retrieved the pad. Sir, perhaps they do not understand the seriousness of the situation. Then we will make them understand, Vex said. Advance the timeline. We attack in 3 days. The fleet moved forward, toward the human colonies on the frontier. 10,000 ships, ready for war. On Earth, nobody noticed. Jin Cho had been flying cargo ships for 23 years. He knew every trade route in the sector, every shortcut, every station where you could get cheap fuel and decent noodles. His ship, the Morning Star, was older than most space stations. But she ran well, and that was all that mattered. He was 3 days into a routine run from New Sol Colony to the Kepler system when his navigation system started beeping. Jin looked at the display. 3 ships were approaching. Military configuration, Jin sighed. Pirates, probably. Or maybe customs doing another random inspection. He really hoped it wasn't customs. The paperwork took forever. The ships moved closer. Jin's computer identified them as Valorian cruisers. That was odd. The Valorians usually stayed in their own space. What were they doing out here? A message came through on the common channel. Human vessel, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. By order of the Valorian Empire, Jin frowned. He had a delivery schedule to keep. The mining colony on Kepler 442 needed their equipment, and he was already behind because of that solar storm last week. He opened a channel. This is the Morning Star. I'm on a commercial route. What's this about? You are trespassing in Valorian-controlled space, the voice said. Power down immediately, or we will open fire. Jin checked his navigation charts. According to every map he had, this was open space. Free trade zone. Nobody controlled it. I think there's been a mistake, Jin said. This isn't Valorian space. This is a free trade corridor. Has been for 50 years. The Valorian Empire has declared war on humanity, the voice said. All human vessels must surrender or be destroyed. Jin blinked. War? Since when? 3 weeks ago. Now power down your engines. 3 weeks. Jin tried to remember if he had seen any news about a war. Nothing came to mind. Then again, he didn't pay much attention to politics. Too boring. Look, Jin said. I don't know anything about a war. I'm just trying to deliver cargo. Can we maybe work something out? I really need to stay on schedule. There'll be no negotiation. Power down or we will fire. Jin looked at his cargo hold. Mining equipment, food supplies, medical kits. Nothing fancy, but the colonists needed it. If he turned back now, they would have to wait another month for the next shipment. I'm going to have to file a complaint about this, Jin said. This is interference with legitimate commerce. Very illegal. The Valorian ships powered up their weapons. Jin could see the energy readings spike on his sensors. Last warning, human. Jin tapped a button on his console. The Morning Star was old, but she had some useful features. Back when his grandfather owned the ship, space was more dangerous. Pirates everywhere, random warlords, weird things coming out of deep space. So the ship had defense systems. Very good defense systems. Jin had never actually used them. Never needed to. He wasn't even entirely sure how they worked. He pressed the button and went back to eating his lunch. Instant noodles, the spicy kind. Pretty good. The defense system activated automatically. It scanned the 3 Valorian cruisers, identified them as threats, and responded. The whole process took about 2 seconds. 3 precise energy beams shot out. From the Morning Star, they hit the Valorian ships in their main power cores. The cruisers went dark instantly. No explosion, no drama, just sudden power failure. The ships began drifting, their engines dead. Jin's computer beeped. Threat neutralized, it said in a cheerful voice. Jin looked up from his noodles. That was quick. He checked his sensors. The Valorian ships were still there, just floating. Life support was still working, so the crews were fine, but their engines and weapons were completely disabled. Jin opened a channel. Hey, you guys okay over there? My defense system got a little enthusiastic. Sorry about that. You might want to call for a tow. There was no response. Jin shrugged and went back to his noodles. He made a note to file a complaint when he raised CHED Kepler 442. Interference with commerce was a serious matter. There were laws about this sort of thing. On Kepler 442, Colony Administrator Nari Sung was having a bad day. The water treatment plant was acting up again. The third recycler had broken down and they were waiting for replacement parts. Now she had 300 colonists complaining about the water. Pressured her assistant came into the office with a datapad. Administrator Sung, we received a priority message from Earth. Hurry looked up from her work. What is it? It's about a war. With the Valorian Empire, Nari took the pad and read the message. It was very official, with lots of legal language. The summary said that humanity was now in a state of conflict with the Valorians. All colonies should remain alert. When did this happen? Nari asked. 3 weeks ago, according to the date stamp. And they're just telling us now? Apparently, it had to go through several departments first. Nari rubbed her temples. She had enough problems with the water plant. Now this. Okay, she said. Put it in the announcements file. We'll mention it at the next community meeting. Should we do anything else? Security measures, maybe? Nari thought about it. We have security measures. There's the old defense grid. From when the colony was first established, Nari vaguely remembered something about that. When the first colonists arrived 80 years ago, they had installed some kind of defense system. But nothing had ever happened, so everyone forgot about it. Did it even still work? She asked. I have no idea. We'll check on it when you have time, Nari said. But first, can you call engineering about the water plant? That's more important. Her assistant nodded and left. Nari went back to her work. A war. How strange. She wondered if it would affect their supply shipments. On Earth, Unili finally got around to reading the Valorian Declaration. She was Assistant Secretary of Minor Foreign Affairs, which meant she dealt with all the small diplomatic issues that nobody else wanted to handle. The Declaration had been sitting in her inbox for 2 weeks. She had been busy with other things. There was a trade dispute with the Krillian merchants. Some confusion about fishing rights near the Neptune colonies. A complaint from the Terran ambassadors about the cafeteria food. She read through the Valorian message. It was very formal. Very angry. Lots of threats. Yuna made a note and forwarded it to her intern, Wuhan. Can you look into this? She wrote. Draft a preliminary response. Nothing too detailed. Just acknowledge receipt. Wu was a good kid. Fresh out of university, very eager. He would handle it. Yuna checked her calendar. She had a meeting in 10 minutes about the cafeteria situation. Apparently, several alien species were allergic to the new synthetic protein. That needed to be fixed quickly. The war could wait. Tae Lim was reviewing permit applications when the alert came through. He was the mayor of New Busan, which sounded impressive but mostly meant signing a lot of paperwork. Right now, he was looking at a proposal for a new shopping complex near the South District. His secretary knocked on the door. "Mayor Lim, we have a situation." Tae looked up. "Is it the drainage system again?" "I told engineering to fix that." "No, sir. It's about the Valorian fleet." "What Valorian fleet?" His secretary pulled up a display on the wall screen. It showed a tactical map of local space. There were a lot of red dots approaching the colony. A lot. 200 ships, his secretary said. They entered scanner range 15 minutes ago. They're heading straight for us. Tae counted the dots. His secretary was right. 200 ships? That was quite a lot. Do we know what they want? Tae asked. We tried hailing them. They sent back a message saying we should surrender immediately. Surrender what? The colony, I think. I looked at the map again. 200 warships. This seemed excessive. New Busan was a farming colony. They grew vegetables and raised chickens. What did the Valorians want with vegetables? Is this about that war thing? Tae asked. What war thing? There was a memo. About a week ago. Something about humanity and the Valorians having a disagreement. His secretary searched through the files. Oh, here it is. Yes. Apparently there's a war happening. Why wasn't I told? You were told? You got the memo? Tae vaguely remembered seeing something about it. But there had been so many memos that week. The Harvest Festival planning, the new recycling protocols, the complaint about noise from the processing plant. A war had seemed less important, Tae said. What do we do about this? I'll call Ari. She's supposed to handle security. Ari Choi was the colony's defense coordinator. It was a part-time position. She spent most of her time teaching mathematics at the local school. Defense coordination was just something she did on weekends. When Tae called her, she was in the middle of a lesson on advanced calculus. Ari, we have a situation, Tae said. Can it wait? I'm teaching. There are 200 Valorian warships approaching the colony. Ari looked at her students. They were working on problems. Very focused. How long until they get here? She asked. About 30 minutes. K. I'll be there in 20. Class, continue with problems 5 through 10. I'll be back. She grabbed her coat and headed to the administrative building. On the way, she called up the colony's defense files on her tablet. She had never actually looked at them before. There had never been a reason New Busan had been established 82 years ago. The first colonists had installed a defense grid, as was standard procedure for all colonies back then. But nothing had ever attacked them. The system had been sitting idle for 8 decades. Ari found the system manual. It was very old. Written in a technical language she barely understood. Most of it was about maintenance protocols and testing procedures. She met Tae in his office. Together they looked at the defense grid controls. Does it still work? Tae asked. I have no idea, Ari said. The last maintenance log is from 60 years ago. Should we turn it on? I don't know how to turn it on. They both stared at the controls. There were a lot of buttons. None of them were labeled clearly. Meanwhile, in the school building, Hwan Bei was working on a project. He was 16 years old and very interested in old technology. His assignment was to research the colony's early infrastructure and write a report about it. He had found some interesting information about the defense grid. The original installation documents were in the historical archives. Hwan was reading through them, trying to understand how the system worked. There was a note about a test protocol. According to the manual, you could run a diagnostic by activating a specific sequence. Hwan looked at the sequence and thought it seemed simple enough. He pulled out his tablet, connected to the colony's main network. The defense grid was still accessible through the old interface. Nobody had bothered to change the access codes. Juan entered the test sequence just to see what would happen. The defense grid woke up immediately. It had been waiting for 82 years, waiting for a threat, waiting to protect the colony. Its sensors activated and scanned local space. It found 200 warships approaching. Unknown configuration. Hostile intent detected. The grid analyzed the threat in microseconds. It calculated firing solutions. It charged its weapons. In his office, Tay saw the lights flicker. What was that? Ari checked her tablet. The defense grid just activated. How? We didn't do anything. Outside, in the space above New Busan, the defense grid began its work. The system was old, built during humanity's early expansion period. Back then, people were more worried about threats. They built things to last. They built things strong, the grid fired. Not bullets or missiles. Something more precise. Energy beams that could disrupt a ship's power core without destroying the vessel. Clean, efficient, safe. The beams moved at light speed. They hit every ship in the Valorian fleet simultaneously. 200 warships went dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapons powered down. Their shields collapsed. The whole engagement took 4.7 seconds. On the flagship of the Valorian fleet, Supreme Commander Vex watched his screens go black. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but all weapons and propulsion were offline. What happened? He demanded. His tactical officer was frantically checking systems. Sir, we've been hit. All ships report total power failure. Main cores are offline. How? We didn't see any weapons fire. No missiles, no energy signatures, nothing. Unknown, sir. The attack came from the colony itself. X stared at the planet below. A farming colony. Population 200,000? No military presence. They had destroyed his entire fleet in seconds. Get engineering on this immediately, Vex said. I want to know what hit us. In the school, Juan saw a message pop up on his tablet. Defense test complete. All threats neutralized. System returning to standby mode. Threats. What threats? He looked out the window. The sky looked normal. Clear and blue. Juan shrugged and went back to his homework. He had learned something interesting for his project. The old defense grid still worked. That was good to know. In the administrative building, Tay and Ari were getting reports from all over the colony. No damage reported, Ari said. Everyone's fine. What about the Valorian ships? They're just floating up there. Life support is active, but everything else is offline. Tay thought about this. 200 disabled warships. That would create a lot of debris if they fell into orbit. Send them a bill, he said. A bill? For cleanup costs. And for unauthorized use of our orbital space, and for making us activate the defense grid. That probably used a lot of power. Ari nodded and started drafting an invoice. Outside, the students were coming out of their classrooms for lunch. Some of them had seen bright flashes in the sky earlier. They thought it was pretty. Like fireworks. Nobody told them they had just witnessed a battle. It didn't seem important enough to mention. The emergency session of the Galactic Senate was called 3 days after the New Busan incident. Every major species sent their representatives. Everyone wanted answers. Hannah Kim walked into the chamber with Kwan following behind her. She had been pulled out of a very nice vacation for this. She was not happy about it. The Valorian ambassador was already there. He looked terrible. His skin was a pale gray color, and he seemed much smaller than before. The Senate president, a Krillian named Voss, called the session to order. We are here to discuss the recent military engagement between the Valorian Empire and humanity. Ambassador Kim, the Senate demands an explanation. How did your colony destroy an entire Valorian battle fleet? Hannah sat down and looked at her notes. Kwan had prepared a briefing for her on the flight over. She had read most of it. To be clear, Hannah said, we didn't destroy anything. The ships are all intact. Just disabled. That's not the point, Voss said. The Valorian Empire sent their most powerful fleet, and it was neutralized in less than 5 seconds. The Senate needs to know what weapons humanity possesses. Hana looked confused. Weapons? That was just the colony defense grid. Standard equipment. The chamber erupted in noise. Ambassadors were shouting questions. The Valorian ambassador looked like he might faint. Voss called for order. Ambassador Kim? Are you saying all human colonies have this capability? Of course, Hannah said. It's basic infrastructure. Like plumbing or power generation. She pulled up a holographic display. This is the grid installed on New Busan. It's an older model. The newer colonies have much better systems. The display showed technical specifications. Energy output, range, targeting precision. The numbers were staggering. A small ambassador from the Terran Coalition stood up. Ambassador Kim, these specifications suggest your defense grid could disable our entire fleet. Our entire civilization's fleet. Hannah checked the numbers. Oh, yes, probably. But why would we do that? Back on Earth, Sora Nam was having an interesting day. She was chief historian at the Terran Archive, which meant she spent most of her time organizing old records and giving tours to school children. Now she was in a conference room with a dozen military officers and government officials. Can someone explain to me, said General Wang, why our colony defense systems are apparently the most powerful weapons in the galaxy? Sora pulled up a timeline on the display. It's really quite simple. When humanity first started expanding into space, we were very paranoid. We had just survived 3 world wars and a near-extinction event from that asteroid impact. We thought the universe was extremely dangerous. She showed images from Earth's history. Wars, disasters, close calls with extinction. So when we built our first colonies, we built them to survive anything. We assumed we would face threats far worse than what we had on Earth. Alien invasions, cosmic horrors, rogue AI, interdimensional monsters. We prepared for everything. But none of that exists, said Colonel Park. Exactly, Sora said. We got into space and found out the galaxy was actually quite peaceful. Most species were nice. Wars were small and polite. Nothing tried to eat us or turn us into batteries or whatever. So we just kept using our old designs because they worked fine. She showed technical documents. Our civilian cargo ships have military-grade armor, so we thought space pirates would be using planet-killer weapons. Our farming equipment is radiation-hardened because we thought every planet might be radioactive. Our buildings are designed to survive orbital bombardment because we thought invasions would be common. Mira, a military intelligence officer, was reading through classified files. She had been doing this for 3 days. The more she read, the more worried she became. General, she said quietly, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Our actual military. The one that's been preparing for real threats. Deep space monitoring has been tracking things from outside the galaxy. Things we thought might be dangerous? We've been building weapons to fight those. She showed them the specifications. Ships that could crack moons. Weapons that could sterilize planets. Defense systems that could hold off invasion fleets of millions. Nobody told the rest of the galaxy about this, Mira said. We thought it was normal. We thought everyone else had similar capabilities. General Wang stared at the numbers. Are you telling me that our actual military could conquer the entire galaxy by accident? Not by accident, Mira said. We could do it very much on purpose. It would take about a week. There was silence in the room. We should probably not mention this, Sora said. It might make people nervous. Back at the Galactic Senate, Hannah was trying to explain the situation. It was not going well. You have to understand, she said. We thought everyone had this technology. That's why we moved most of our population to space stations and asteroid habitats. We thought planets were too vulnerable. We assumed everyone knew planets were dangerous to live on. The Valorian ambassador spoke up. His voice was weak. You abandoned your planets because you thought they were too easy to destroy. Well, yes. Isn't that obvious? One good asteroid and your whole civilization is gone. We learned that the hard way. She showed images of human space. Thousands of orbital habitats, asteroid cities, moon bases. Only about 20% of humans still live on Earth. The rest are in space. It's safer. Krillian Ambassador raised a claw. Ambassador Kim, if your civilian technology is this advanced, what does your military have? Hannah hesitated. I don't actually know. That's classified. I just handled diplomatic issues, guess the ambassador said. Hannah thought about it. Well, the military's job is to protect us from really dangerous things. Things from deep space. Unknown threats. So they probably have weapons designed to fight things much worse than, well, than anything in the galaxy. How much worse? I really don't know. But our military has been preparing for potential extinction-level threats for 200 years. So probably pretty serious weapons. The chamber was silent again. Voss spoke slowly. Let me understand this correctly. Your civilian technology, the things you use every day, can defeat any military in the galaxy. And your actual military is designed to fight threats that could destroy your civilization despite having that civilian technology. That sounds right. Hannah said, and you never thought to mention this to anyone. Why would we? We thought everyone knew. We thought this was normal. The Valorian ambassador stood up. He looked very tired. The Valorian Empire wishes to formally withdraw our declaration of war. We apologize for any inconvenience. It's fine, Hannah said. But you still need to fill out the forms. Proper procedure is important. She pulled out her tablet. I have Form 847 here. That's for withdrawal of hostile intent. You need to submit it to the Bureau of External Relations. Processing time is usually 4 to 6 weeks. The ambassador took the form. His hands were shaking slightly. Hannah stood up to leave. Oh, and you'll need to settle that invoice from New Busan for the cleanup costs. They're very serious about their budgets. As she walked out of the chamber, she heard the other ambassadors start talking all at once. Everyone sounded worried. Quan followed her. Ambassador, do you think we should have explained this earlier? Probably, Hannah said, but nobody asked. It seemed rude to just volunteer information about weapons. That's not good diplomacy. She checked her messages. Her sister had sent another video of the puppy. It had learned to roll over. Much better, Hannah said, and sent back another heart emoji. 6 months had passed since the Valorian Empire declared war on humanity. In that time, many things had happened. Most of them were not about the war. The war itself had become a joke in the Galactic Senate. Everyone knew about it. The mighty Valorian Empire had declared war on humanity, and humanity had barely noticed. Some species found it funny, others found it terrifying. The Valorians just found it embarrassing. Supreme Commander Vex had been trying to surrender for 4 months. This turned out to be harder than starting the war. He sat in his office, looking at another rejected form. The Human Bureau of External Relations had sent it back. Again, correct form type, the message said. Please use Form 847R revised, not Form 847R original. The revised version includes updated treaty language required under the Terran, Accords of 2784. Vex had filled out 17 different forms. Every single one had been rejected for small errors. Wrong dates. Missing signatures. Incorrect department codes. Using blue ink instead of black, his aide came in with another stack of papers. Sir, the latest forms from Earth. They say we need to include documentation of all military actions during the conflict period. We didn't take any military actions, Vex said. Our fleet was disabled before we could do anything. Then we need to fill out Form 920N. That's for conflicts with no actual combat. Vex put his head in his hands. How do humans get anything done? Meanwhile, human civilians were continuing with their lives. Jin Cho was still making his cargo runs. He had actually benefited from the war. Several Valorian trade routes had been disrupted. The human shippers got new contracts. Jin had purchased a struggling mining operation from a Valorian company at a very good price. They were desperate to sell because of the war. It was only after the purchase went through that Jin realized it was actually a military outpost. This is awkward, he told his lawyer. Not really, his lawyer said. According to the Treaty of 2756, any military installation purchased during peacetime maintains its civilian status unless explicitly reactivated. Since Earth never officially acknowledged the war, this counts as a peacetime purchase. So I own a military base. Technically, yes. But it's zoned as industrial property, so you can convert it to civilian use. Jin turned it into a shipping depot. The Valorian soldiers who had been stationed there were happy to stay on as employees. The pay was better, and the food was much improved. On New Busan, Narration had finally fixed the water treatment plant. It had taken 3 months and a lot of patience. Compared to that, the war had been simple. The colony had grown. Several thousand Valorian citizens had requested permission to immigrate. They said they were impressed by New Busan's infrastructure. Also, the vegetables were very good. Nari approved the applications. The colony needed more people anyway. They were planning to expand the farming district, and extra hands would be useful. Do we need to do anything special for Valorian residents? Her assistant asked. Just make sure they fill out the proper immigration forms, Nari said. And someone should explain to them how the recycling system works. We have very strict rules about composting. The former Valorian fortress world of Karsaven had an interesting story. It had been absorbed by a human colony completely by accident. The colony, New Jindo, had been expanding its terraforming operations. They needed more land for agriculture. The administrators checked the maps and found an empty planet nearby. Perfect for expansion, they sent engineers and equipment, started setting up atmospheric processors, built habitation domes. The whole process took 6 months. Nobody realized Karsavan was a Valorian military world until the base commander came out to ask what was happening. We're terraforming, the human engineer explained. Making the planet livable. Should be done in about 2 years. But this is a military base, the commander said. Do you want us to stop? The commander looked at the atmospheric processors. They were already making the air breathable. The temperature was becoming comfortable. Plants were starting to grow. Can you make it rain? The commander asked. It's very dry here. Sure, we can add that to the schedule. The Valorian soldiers voted to join the human colony. Their planet was going to have rain and plants and breathable air. That was much better than a military base. On Earth, Daesong finally reached item 47 in his queue. The war declaration from the Valorian Empire. He read through it carefully. Very official. Very angry. Lots of legal language. He checked the date. 6 months ago. That seemed like a long time. He wondered if it was still relevant. Day forwarded the declaration to the Department of Defense. Please review and advise, he wrote. This may require a response. The Department of Defense received the message and scheduled a meeting to discuss it. The earliest available time was in 3 months. They had budget reviews to handle first. And then there was the annual equipment audit. The war could wait. Wu Han, the intern at the Bureau of External Relations, had become famous. Not in a good way. He was the person who had been handling the Valorian surrender attempts. Every rejected form, every corrected document, every bureaucratic delay, that was all him. He didn't mean for it to become such a big thing. He was just following the rules. The forms had to be filled out correctly. That was his job. Yuna Lee, his supervisor, called him into her office. Woo! We need to talk about the Valorian situation. Yes, ma'am. They still haven't submitted the correct documentation for their surrender.
I know.
But maybe we can be a little more flexible. This is taking a very long time, the rules say. I know what the rules say, but sometimes we need to use common sense. Who thought about this? So I should accept their surrender, even if the forms aren't perfect? Yes, within reason. The next Valorian surrender form came in 2 days later. Wu reviewed it carefully. There were 3 small errors. Wrong date format in section G, missing middle initial on page 7. Incorrect department code in the routing section. He approved it anyway. The Valorian Empire officially surrendered. The war was over. It had lasted 6 months and 3 days. There had been no casualties. No destroyed ships. No battles beyond the first engagement that lasted less than 5 seconds. Earth's official response came a week later. It was signed by the Secretary of External Affairs, a woman named Yoon Park, who had just returned from maternity leave. "We accept the Valorian Empire's surrender," the letter said. "Please see attached invoice for administrative costs, processing fees, and damages." The invoice was very detailed. There were charges for form processing, charges for diplomatic staff time, charges for the disabled warships that had cluttered New Bison's orbital space, charges for the energy used by the defense grid. The total came to 47 million credits. Vex paid it immediately. It was worth it just to make the whole thing end. The Galactic Senate held a celebration. They called it a peace ceremony. Most of the species were just relieved the war was over without anyone getting hurt. Hannah Kim attended. She wore a nice dress and tried to look diplomatic. People kept congratulating her on humanity's victory. "We didn't really do anything," she kept saying. "It was mostly just paperwork." A Krillian ambassador approached her with all four eyes open. "Ambassador Kim, I have a question. During this entire conflict, did humanity ever take the war seriously?" Hannah thought about it. She thought about Tay approving shopping center permits while his colony was being attacked. She thought about Jin buying a military base by accident. She thought about Nari worrying more about water pressure than warships. She thought about herself. Napping through the original declaration, "There was a war," she asked. The ambassador stared at her. He couldn't tell if she was joking. Hannah smiled and walked away. She had a flight to catch. Her sister's puppy was learning new tricks, and she wanted to see them in person. The war was over. Life went on. Somewhere in the galaxy, civilizations rose and fell. Empires competed for power. Species struggled for dominance. Humanity grew vegetables and fixed water plants and delivered cargo and filled out forms, and that, somehow, was enough to make them the most terrifying civilization in the galaxy.